The air in the house felt different the moment she arrived. It wasn't just the usual buzz of a new family member. It was something else, something that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I had never thought much about her before, not in that way. She was just my stepsister, someone who shared the same house but never really had any influence on me. That all changed the day she moved in. It was a typical day, or at least I tried to convince myself it was. I was sitting in the living room, flipping through a magazine when she walked in. She had always been the quiet type, the one who kept to herself and rarely engaged in anything that felt too close to home. But this time, there was a difference. Maybe it was the way she looked at me, or the way she leaned against the doorframe with a slight smile. It made me feel uneasy in a way I couldn't explain. It wasn't that she was doing anything overtly provocative. Nothing in her behavior suggested that she was aware of the sudden shift in the air. But I noticed it. The subtle tension in the way she positioned herself, the way her eyes lingered a little longer than necessary, the soft laugh that sounded too knowing for someone who had barely known me. My mind had always been good at compartmentalizing things, but this was different. There was something in the way she moved, in the way she spoke, that made me feel like I was the one out of place. As time went on, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Her presence was like a spark waiting to ignite something I couldn't put my finger on. It made me uncomfortable, yet, at the same time, I couldn't look away. I tried to ignore it. It didn't seem right to acknowledge these feelings. She was my stepsister after all. I had no business feeling anything more than familial affection. But the more I tried to suppress it, the more intense it became. Every time she was near me, my chest tightened. My thoughts would race, then freeze, paralyzed by guilt and confusion. What was wrong with me? Why couldn't I just treat her like I always had? The kitchen became the center of all these emotions. It was where we spent most of our time together, where we exchanged fleeting words, often awkward and forced. She would stand by the counter, preparing something, and I would find myself watching her, noticing the way her hair fell over her shoulder or how she hummed to herself. I wondered if she knew how it affected me, how her mere presence seemed to disrupt my routine. There were times when I tried to convince myself it was nothing, that she was just being friendly, or maybe just awkward herself, and I was reading into things. But deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. My stepsister was becoming more than just a family member. And with every interaction, the line between familial comfort and something much more complicated seemed to blur. It was a feeling I couldn't shake, a sensation that clung to me even when I was alone. What had started as mere curiosity about her, wondering if there was more to this quiet, reserved girl, had shifted into something far more complicated. But I didn't want to admit it, not even to myself. But the truth was, I was already trapped in a cycle I didn't understand. I couldn't deny the pull, the magnetic energy that seemed to radiate between us. I felt it every time we were alone together, even in those quiet, everyday moments. And though I never dared to acknowledge it out loud, I knew something was changing between us. Something I wasn't ready to face. The days dragged on, but the tension between us only deepened. Every time I was near her, my body reacted before my mind could catch up. I tried to ignore it, telling myself I was overthinking things. But deep inside, I knew it was more than that. She was always so close, her presence almost overwhelming. I felt it in the little things, her laugh, the way she'd say my name with a soft smile, or the way she brushed past me as if she didn't notice how much it affected me. It was subtle, but it was there. And it was undeniable. She seemed to enjoy testing the boundaries without crossing them fully. She would lean in a bit too close when she handed me something, her breath brushing against my skin for just a moment longer than necessary. At times, her fingers would graze mine as she passed by, and each time, I couldn't ignore the jolt of electricity that shot through me. I tried to act normal, to shrug it off, but each small touch left me more conflicted. Was she doing it on purpose? Was it just me, or was she aware of what was happening between us? Her behavior was confusing. There were moments when she acted distant, almost cold, and then suddenly she'd be warm, too warm, as if she was trying to pull me in. I didn't know how to interpret it. Was she just being friendly? Or was there something more? I wanted to believe I was reading too much into it, that it was all in my head. But every time our eyes met, I felt that spark. Something unspoken, something neither of us could ignore. I couldn't tell if she was playing a game, or if maybe she was just as lost in this strange, uncomfortable dynamic as I was. There were no clear signs, no blatant moves to show her intentions. But I couldn't shake the feeling that she was waiting for me to make the first move, to acknowledge what was happening between us. The silence in those moments was deafening, leaving me unable to think straight. Should I speak up? Should I distance myself from her? The questions gnawed at me, but the answers were never clear. Each interaction left me feeling more disoriented. I found myself questioning whether the tension was real, or if I was just imagining it. But there was no denying the way my pulse would quicken when she was near. No matter how much I tried to push it away, the attraction, the discomfort, and the uncertainty only grew stronger. I could see the way she watched me, how her gaze lingered just a moment too long. And sometimes, when she thought I wasn't looking, I'd catch her eyes following me, studying me in a way that made my stomach churn with anticipation. There was something dangerous in her gaze, something that told me she knew exactly what she was doing, even if she wasn't willing to admit it. Or maybe she was testing me, waiting to see how far I'd let things go before they spiraled out of control. The more time passed, the harder it became to ignore the way my body reacted to her presence. I started avoiding her, retreating to other parts of the house whenever I could. But it didn't work. No matter how much distance I tried to create, she was always there, just on the edge of my awareness. Even when I wasn't near her, I felt her. She was a shadow that followed me around, a constant reminder of the boundary that had already been crossed, even if only in my mind. But I couldn't stop thinking about her.
It consumed me.
I felt trapped by this invisible connection, and the more I tried to push it away, the more intense it became. What was I supposed to do with these feelings? She was my stepsister. I shouldn't feel like this, and yet everything in me screamed that I did. It was a dangerous line, one that neither of us seemed willing to acknowledge, but one that was becoming harder and harder to ignore. I had never imagined that it would come to this, that I would find myself standing on the edge of something I couldn't undo. But in that moment, with her standing too close and the tension too thick to ignore, I knew that everything had changed. There was no going back now. She had always been a little forward, but this was different. She stepped into my space, her eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that left me breathless. I could feel the heat radiating from her body, the way her presence seemed to fill the room in a way that felt almost suffocating. My heart hammered in my chest, but I couldn't move. I was frozen, caught between wanting to step back and the strange pull that made me want to lean in. Without warning, she reached out, brushing her fingers lightly against my arm. It was casual, at least that's what I told myself. But the touch sent a shock through me, and for a second, I forgot how to breathe. I didn't pull away. I didn't know what to do. Her hand lingered there, just long enough for me to feel the weight of it. Just long enough to remind me of how much I wanted her, how much I had wanted this, without admitting it, even to myself. Her voice broke the silence, soft and almost teasing. "You've been distant lately." Her words were innocent enough, but the way she said them made my stomach twist. There was something in her tone, a playfulness mixed with something darker, something that made me question everything I thought I knew about our relationship. I wanted to respond, to say something, anything, to pull myself back from the brink. But I couldn't. My mind raced, trying to make sense of the situation, but I couldn't find the words. I stood there, caught in her gaze, feeling her breath against my skin as she moved just a fraction closer. My body reacted before I could stop it. My heart skipped, my chest tightened, and for a moment, I didn't know where I ended and she began. Then, without warning, she closed the gap. Her lips brushed against my ear, and the shock of it sent a jolt through me that I couldn't ignore. I could feel the heat of her body pressed against mine, her soft breath tickling my skin. I felt paralyzed, caught between my own desire and the overwhelming guilt that threatened to swallow me whole. This was wrong. This was beyond wrong. But in that moment, I didn't care. Her hand moved from my arm to my back, pulling me toward her. It wasn't forceful, just a gentle but undeniable push that made me step forward, closing the final gap between us. My breath hitched as I stood there, inches away from her, feeling the weight of the moment bearing down on me. She wasn't backing away, and neither was I. My body was betraying me, reacting to her every movement, every touch, as if it had a mind of its own. And then she whispered my name, soft and almost like a promise. It was a sound that shattered whatever resistance I had left. Without thinking, I closed the distance. My lips met hers, tentatively at first, unsure of what was happening, but then with a desperate need that took over everything. The kiss was slow, lingering, and filled with an intensity that made my head spin. I couldn't stop it. I didn't want to stop it. In that moment, I realized I was in too deep. There was no turning back now. I was tangled in a web of emotions, of desire and guilt, and no matter how hard I tried to break free, I couldn't. My mind screamed at me to stop, to pull away and end it before it went any further. But my body refused. It demanded more. And so I gave in, knowing that nothing would ever be the same again. I don't know how long we stood there, lost in the chaos of our tangled emotions. But when we finally broke apart, it wasn't with relief. There was no clarity, no sense of right or wrong. Just a heavy silence between us, the weight of what had just happened settling in like a storm that had only just begun. I didn't know what to feel, what to do next. All I knew was that everything had changed. And whatever came after this, I wasn't sure I was ready for it. The aftermath hit me harder than I expected. The weight of what had just happened hung over me like a dark cloud, suffocating every thought, every breath. I stood there, feeling every ounce of guilt and confusion course through my veins. I wanted to run, to escape, but I couldn't. The moment lingered, burned into my mind, and no matter how hard I tried to push it away, it wouldn't go. I couldn't look at her the same way anymore. The way she moved, the way she spoke, it all felt different now, charged with something that had never been there before. I had crossed a line, and there was no uncrossing it. But even with the guilt weighing me down, I couldn't deny that a part of me wanted more. I hated myself for it, but I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened between us. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, felt the heat of her body pressed against mine, and I couldn't shake the desire that still burned within me. She, on the other hand, seemed unaffected. When I tried to distance myself, she acted as though nothing had changed. She went about her days as if we hadn't just crossed some invisible boundary that could never be erased. It was like she was playing a game, teasing me, making sure I knew I couldn't hide from what had happened. Her actions were subtle, but they were there, in the way she would brush past me, in the way she'd look at me with that same knowing gaze. I couldn't tell if she was enjoying this power she seemed to have over me, or if she, too, was struggling with the weight of what we had done. I wanted to confront her, to ask her what it all meant, but every time I tried, I froze. I couldn't bring myself to say the words, couldn't admit to her what I was feeling. It was easier to pretend that nothing had changed, to bury the emotions that threatened to drown me. But no matter how hard I tried to push it down, it was always there, lurking just beneath the surface. There was a part of me that wanted to confront her, to ask her to acknowledge what we had done, to make sense of the mess we'd created. But another part of me was terrified of what that conversation would bring. What if she didn't feel the same way? What if she regretted it? What if I was just a fool who had been caught up in the moment, imagining something that was never really there? I couldn't live with that uncertainty. I couldn't live with the idea that what had happened between us was nothing more than a fleeting mistake. So I kept my distance, hoping that time would somehow make it all go away. But every time I saw her, every time our eyes met, I knew that the distance I had created wasn't enough. The damage had been done, and it was too late to go back to the way things were. In the quiet moments, when I was alone with my thoughts, I would replay everything in my head. I would wonder if I had done the right thing, if I had any right to feel the way I did. But deep down, I knew that nothing would ever be the same. We couldn't go back to pretending. The lines had been drawn, and there was no way to erase them. So, I kept living with the weight of it all. The guilt, the desire, the confusion. It all became a part of me, a constant reminder of the boundary I had crossed. And as much as I wanted to believe that I could forget, that I could move on, I knew that I never would. What happened between us was something that would stay with me forever, a secret that neither of us could ever truly escape.